Hello, I'm Eric Matisik, co-chair of Denver Startup Week. Last year, we were able to bring the global audience together for Denver Startup Week, and this year, we're excited to welcome that global audience back as we celebrate and showcase the best of entrepreneurship that the Denver ecosystem in Colorado has to offer. In Denver and beyond, there are lots to explore this week, but most importantly, we're excited that you're joining us. We have nearly 50 sponsor companies who contribute to make Denver Startup Week possible. Let's show our love for these companies today and all week long. Thanks to our headquarters and title sponsor, Amazon, and our title sponsors whose leadership makes this week come to life, Capital One Cafe, the Downtown Denver Partnership, Fluid Truck, Hotel Engine, and WeWork, and our track sponsors who've made all the great content you're hearing today possible, which includes our founder track sponsor, Kickstart, our growth track sponsor, Friday Health Plans, developer track sponsor, Quizlet, product track sponsor, Palantir, design track sponsor, Battery 621 and the Public Works, people track sponsor, Exactly, and the spotlight event sponsor, Strat Labs. Our headline event sponsors are bringing this excitement to the entire week. Thank you to B-Side Fund, Colorado Public Radio, Comcast, Coors Brewing Company, Denver Pavilions, Entrepreneurship at the University of Denver, Gusto, JP Morgan Chase, Method, Moss Adams, Pi Insurance, Promontory Mortgage Path, Red Bull Basement, Southwest, Tattered Cover, and the VF Venture Foundry. Finally, thank you to our sponsors and member sponsors who are listed on the screen, and thank you for your support of Denver Startup Week. Now, let's get to it.
Hello, Denver. We are so excited to be here. We're excited to tell you a bit more about the Foundry for Builders program and to be a part of the Denver startup ecosystem. We moved our headquarters to Denver in the last year, and we're excited to call Denver home. Foundry for Builders, essentially we're offering our end-to-end Foundry solution that is deployed to major governments and enterprises worldwide, to early and growth stage companies so that they can build their business on Foundry from day one.
Hi everyone, welcome to Denver Startup Week. My name is Ryan Margolis and I'm the Product Track Chair and member of the Denver Startup Week Organizing Committee. Thank you for joining us for the 10th anniversary of Denver Startup Week. At DSW, we strive to make all of our sessions a space where attendees can connect, learn, and grow, regardless of age, gender identity, gender expression, race, ability, or sexual orientation. A special thank you to our sponsors for their support in helping us to keep DSW free and accessible for all. Thank you for joining us. Have a great week.
Okay, I think that's the end of that. Welcome, everyone. Sorry about a little bit of technical difficulty right there, but welcome to day one of Denver Startup Week. This would be the point if we were together where we would all cheer and, cheers our plastic solo cups because it's happy hour, but we can't be together. That's okay, maybe next year. We have a great conversation queued up for today with an excellent set of panelists. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Thumbs up from my panelists if you can see it. Thanks for being here, even if it's only because Facebook and Instagram are down right now, but we appreciate you guys tuning in to our chat today. Hopefully it's valuable for you. In today's session, we're going to be talking about the chicken or the egg situation of how to get into product. How do you break into product management without currently being in a product role? I get asked this question a lot, and it's a common conundrum. Companies want you to have experience before they'll hire you, but you can't get experience to get hired unless you're hired to gain that experience. Today, we're going to answer how to get your first product role in your current organization, or maybe a new one, with tips and advice from seasoned product pros, all in different industries with varying levels of experience, which brings me to my panelists. First off, we have Laura Potsi.
Hey everyone, my name is Laura Potsi. I am a senior product manager with a company called Crafted, based here in Denver. We're a balanced team consultancy. I moved to Denver about 3 years ago, and that's when I joined Crafted, but I've been in product management for about 6 years. So excited to be here. Thanks, Shelby.
Awesome. Laura also has a session on how to put together balanced teams. It's on Wednesday at 9 a.m., so you should check it out. Next, we have Jordan Smallwood coming to us from San Francisco. Jordan, go ahead and intro yourself.
Hey there, my name is Jordan. I'm currently a product manager at Amazon, and I'm leading our products that actually help support third-party, not just digital content providers, but anybody third-party who wants to conduct business on Amazon's ecosystem. And happy to be here, I might add.
Awesome. Jordan is also moderating a product session on Thursday at 10 a.m. about remote and in-person collaboration on Teams. So also check him out, shameless plug. Next up, we have Megan Sprangers, who's coming from the Midwest. I always think Michigan, but it's actually Wisconsin. So Megan, go ahead and intro yourself.
Thanks, Shelby. Yes, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio are all different states. Megan Sprangers, Director of Software Product at the Crisis Prevention Institute based out of Milwaukee. We do de-escalation training for industries and organizations like healthcare, education, and human services. I've probably been in product only 4 or 5 years and really have transitioned from a business intelligence background after about 10 years.
Awesome. And last, but certainly not least, we have Rich Lacy. And a fun fact about Rich before he introduces himself is he is the guy who took a chance on me as a young ex-Galvanize dev bootcamp grad who was really hungry for my first product role. I had just been waiting for someone to take a chance on me and believe in me that I could do it because I knew I could do it myself. And he was that guy. So he's the reason I am where I am today. And I'm super passionate about getting people into the product field. So Rich, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Nice. In hindsight, one of the best hiring decisions I ever made, obviously. So hello, everybody. Rich Lacy. I'm the Chief Product Officer at a company called Samba Safety here in Denver. We build a mobility risk management solution. So think about risk management software for the transportation industry. I got my first product management job 18 years ago. And back then there was no Denver Startup Week and there weren't many software companies in Denver. And I got on an airplane every week to go to the office in San Francisco and then in Utah for a while. So super thrilled to be here at Denver Startup Week. It is an amazing event that is representative of this amazing tech scene we've created here in town. So couldn't be more excited.
Awesome. Thanks, Rich. And of course, I'm Shelby Sir. I'm a group product manager at Bitly and co-founder of Cloutship, and I am your moderator today. So throw any questions that you have in chat throughout this talk. If we're not answering something that you've been curious about, go ahead and throw your question in there. We will be sure to save lots of time at the end to kind of go through a live Q&A of any questions that the audience might have. And in spirit of helping answer any of your questions today, we have one question for you all. We want to know why you're here. So I'm going to launch a quick poll in our Zoom call and go ahead and answer that poll. And while that poll is being answered, I'm going to talk a little bit about why product management is such an interesting and exciting career to be looking into or choosing right now. So product management is one of the fastest growing career tracks in tech right now, as most of us know. Some people are even referring to this time as the age of product management. And why is that? In 2019, which seems like a decade ago, LinkedIn ranked product management as one of the most promising jobs of the year, with a 29% year-over-year growth in job openings. That is an increase in demand for product management roles in the US outpaces the increase in demand for overall roles by 5x, which is kind of crazy. Every company has a product, and every company who has a product needs product managers. And in the digital age, that's just about every company you come across. So it's a really exciting time to be looking at a career in product management, and we are going to talk about how to do that today. So I'm going to end the poll, and it looks like most people, not most people, 43% to be accurate, percent of people are wanting to learn more about what product management is in general. 30% are currently in a product role, and 22% are trying to land their first product role. So we have a pretty good even spread, and 4% are hungry, which is important. So I would love to kick things off hearing about how each of our panelists made their transition into product management. And I think that this is an important and interesting conversation to kick off this talk with, because a lot of people have the misconception that you have to have a business degree or go to a product specific boot camp to get into product. But if you ask those people how they got into their product career, they're going to tell you that they stumbled upon it. So let's start with Laura. And Laura, go ahead and popcorn once you're done. But how did you get into product management?
Perfect. Thanks, Shelby. Well, like probably most people you'll hear, I just kind of stumbled into product management. I was working for a retail company, actually on their marketing team, doing physical product management. I was managing their gift with purchase program. So while I was kind of creating promotions, I was also managing the gifts that would come with those promotions, all the way from idea through, delivery. And I was burning out on that job. Doing promotion work is a thankless job. Everybody always wants more and more and more and more. So I was starting to burn out, but I really loved the company and I wanted to stay with them. And so I was looking at open jobs that were available, and the product that we had just launched an iOS mobile app, and the woman who was managing it, and before that we didn't actually even know the title was a product manager. That's kind of how we were into the scene. But in hindsight, the product manager was leaving to start a band, and I read the product description, and it wildly lined up with exactly what I was doing. And the added benefit of that they were hiring an external consulting group to do a lot of kind of the work. They just need kind of a liaison between my old company and them. So I was able to, I moved into the product manager role, which they then realized from that consulting team that was what we were doing, and paired up with a consulting firm, not unlike what I do now, which is kind of fun. And they taught me the ropes there. So that was, just kind of stumbled into it and fell in love with it.
Awesome. Popcorn away.
Oh, sure. Sorry. Jordan, why don't we go to you?
Okay. I had an interesting background that I actually knew I wanted to be in product management when I was 10, and I'm not using hyperbole there. I got exposed early on to enterprise software through my dad. And I had the opposite problem in that I always knew I wanted to be in product management. But back then, I guess to Rich's point, most product people were ex-dev. So I actually was intimidated and went into product marketing. But as I found myself getting more indignant, if you will, about how the product should be built, I took my mom's advice when I was a kid, where if you complain about something, you can either leave or do something to make it better. So in my spare time, if that even is real, I started my own startup, and we built up a B2B2C product that had an enterprise product and was connected to a consumer product. And that actually gave me the on the ground, real day-to-day experience of being a product manager. And I also earned some sweat equity, since I was literally paying for the privilege of trying to go through the startup slog. So shortly after that, I transitioned fully from being like a hybrid product marketer, product manager, to going full time. In other words, I finally got some guts and courage, and I haven't looked back since. And I'm really grateful to be doing what I am today. And yeah, somehow I ended up here. So I guess it worked out all right.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead and popcorn away.
And I would like to pass it, I guess, to Megan.
All right, thanks. So my journey and stumbling is probably a little closer to Laura's versus Jordan's. Because when I was 10, I wanted to be a veterinarian. So that didn't pan out for me. But I have probably had a title of product in my role for 4 or 5 years, but I made a transition into product after being in business intelligence and data and analytics for a good part of my career. I worked in consulting, and as Rich kind of mentioned, traveling a lot for some consulting work. But with that work, I was able to be part of a lot of startups or fast-growing companies, from dating websites to the little doodads on the back of your phones, which you get a lot of experience in those small spaces doing a lot of things. But as I was trying to transition out of consulting into a role that didn't cause me to move as much or fly as much, I actually applied for a position where I knew somebody at that job. So it pays to have connections and networking, even though it potentially can be painful for introverts like me. Networking really matters. But that helped cause the hiring manager essentially called me back and said, hey, you didn't get that job, but I think you and the experience you have translates really well into the product space. So would you be willing to give that a chance? So I'm a little lucky and fortunate for a few reasons. One, because I had a connection. The person, John, if you're on, thank you for that, was looking for a product position and maybe wasn't having any luck. So he saw something in me, and so I'm grateful for that. And it's honestly how I hire my own people now, just kind of looking for that athlete versus a specialist. So popcorn to Rich, the final one, right? Or Shelby?
Oh, Rich, go ahead.
My story's not nearly as cool as Jordan's. And it was, I was a consultant for a long time, and I got a phone call from an ex-colleague, and he said, hey, you should come and apply at this company I'm at. We're hiring a product manager. And I said, what's a product manager? What do they do? I think there's a product manager here, and I don't know what he does. And so what do they do there? And he explained it to me. I'm like, oh, nah, I think I'm cool. I like what I'm doing. He called me back like a month later and said, no, you need to come out. And he just hounded me. So I flew out and did the interview. But before that, in order to figure out what a product manager was, I bought a book. So this was back when you would buy books to read things. And I read this book. I'm like, this sounds like an awesome job. I could totally do this. And I went and I interviewed, I got the job, and the rest was history. So, it's some of it's about who you know, but really it's about having those skills that other people recognize in you that want to pluck you out of wherever you are right now. Into the role, because there are certain things I think that lend themselves to product management, and I suspect we will talk about a few of those this time.
Yes, we will. Awesome. Thanks, you guys. And my experience, we touched on it a little bit earlier, but I went to a development boot camp, Galvanize, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. I graduated that course, 7 days in, knew I did not want to be a developer, but stuck out the 6 months and then went on a quest on being the middleman between developers and everybody else. And it took 6 months of trying to convince someone to take that chance on me. I finally put a YouTube video on my resume of me rapping at a developer conference and convinced Rich to give me a shot. And that's what happened. So everyone's journey is a little bit different. Awesome. So yes, Brendan, thanks for putting in the chat how you got into product. I always love hearing how people got into this profession. So if there's anyone else who wants to throw how they got into product into the chat, feel free. We are going to get into the juice, into the meat. We're going to get on with it. So we've curated some topics and questions that we're going to talk through. We're going to kick it off by talking about what should someone know about product management before they decide to pursue a career in it? That looks really shiny from the outside, and it is a lot of shine on the inside as well, but there are certain things to know about it before you kind of launch into it intentionally. So Rich, what are your thoughts around that?
It's it does. I hear that a lot. It certainly appears to be a very shiny object inside of most software companies and technology companies. And it is, in fact, undisputably the best job in any technology company because it is a ton of fun. But it is a little bit of everything. The thing I love about it is you dabble. Obviously, you're focused on product development and engineering and marketing, but you get to dabble in a little bit of finance, a little bit of legal. They let you a little bit of sales, hopefully. So that aspect of it is pretty fun. It's always changing. But But there's a couple things that are important. Like I always come to the fact that a technical background in software, and I'll probably be too software centric here, but a technical background will most always serve you well. But so much of what you do is accomplished via soft skills. And because you don't have role power, not a lot of people work for you, probably nobody works for you. Engineering reports to somebody else in the organization. So your job is really to lead and inspire, to influence decisions, and to get the whole company to come along with you on your journey to your vision and your strategy. And you can't force a single one of them to do it. They can all opt out if they don't believe in what you're doing. So that's I think a lot of people don't realize that going in. They just think like they get handed the keys to the kingdom and they can do whatever they want, but it's a little more complicated than that.
Yeah, great. And besides getting handed the keys to the kingdom, what are some main things? What are some, misconceptions about product management and what it is as a career?
So in my experience, like no two organizations are the same in terms of how they do product. And I'm sure Laura sees this as a consultant. She goes and sees a lot of different organizations. There is not a cookie cutter approach to it. Your team, your leadership, your culture, maybe the market you're in, the tech stack you build your products on, all kind of dictate how product is done. So if you're thinking like using past experience or experience from a colleague and they say it's done this way, don't be surprised if it's different. There are obviously some key themes that are the same. A couple things that I always, if I have an internal candidate come to me and tell me that they want to be a product manager, I remind them it is not a 9-to-5 job. It is hectic and crazy, and some days are longer than others, and some days are short. But every day is different, and if you like that, if you like the excitement of things changing, that's key. But you've got to be ready to be out of your comfort zone all the time. If you're the type of person who needs recognition, I find that you have to get your recognition out of the success of your team. Nobody ever says that product manager, we wouldn't be here without the product manager, right? We wouldn't be here without the team and the product and everything. So you are part of a much bigger thing. And then the other thing that I always, because you get a lot of really, people that are really focused on their career, there's not a ton of manager opportunities in product. Like if your passion is managing people, product teams are disproportionately small inside of organizations for the influence they have. We have a tremendous amount of influence on the direction of the company, but we're always a very small team. And there may be one or two manager roles there. So if that's really what you're passionate about, those are few and far between. They're there, but sometimes the best way to get that role is to be really successful in your product and grow your team and then have to hire somebody. But so those are things that I think a lot of people don't think about when they're initially looking at the role as a career.
Absolutely. My favorite quote that I heard at a Denver Startup Week panel a few years ago was, product managers are the managers of nobody, just everyone's expectations. So get that tattooed wherever you'd like on your body and live by it, because it's very true, for sure. So what does a product manager actually do for all of the people in the room who are just trying to familiarize themselves with the career? Jordan, can you touch on that a little bit for us?
Absolutely. So I think, and this is what I was trying to answer in the chat, I think it's very contextual to what you're working in. For instance, if you're an enterprise product, let me start with what a product manager just needs to do no matter what, right? You are, for lack of a better word, operating as the voice of the customer within the organization. So you are both doing a lot of external work, right? Customer research, looking at the direction the market is moving for your particular industry, whatever have you, that can help you understand the customer and what problems you want your product or service to solve for the customer. At the same time, internally, you're taking a lot of that external information, comparing it against where the organization is, whether it's in terms of headcount and resources, what the organization's strategic objectives are, et cetera, and combining that with what you've learned from the external world and trying to combine it into what hopefully represents a cohesive plan to make your product better for that end user or end customer. That's what it is in a nutshell. And then obviously, based on whatever you're working on, based on the type of product you're working on, the vertical you're working in, and what your product level is, there are going to be different layers of responsibility. In fact, I really like what Rich called out, and that a lot of people think that a product manager is like all powerful and you just get to walk around and do what you want. But the joke I always like to make that somebody told me is you have maximum influence, but maybe for how much influence you have, the amount of power you have is maybe on the opposite end of the spectrum. So the best way to explain it in terms of what you do tactically, now that we've gone past the high level stuff, is your job is just to figure out what it's going to take to help your customers solve whatever problem, again, your organization is trying to help them solve.
Awesome. And what are some skills, if you were to list off both hard and soft skills, you think are most important to the PM profession?
Yeah, my personal belief, and again, it depends on everybody, so please take this with a grain of salt, but I would break it up into, there are some, I guess, like personality traits or intrinsic skills. You have to have soft skills, and then there are some hard skills. So I think the soft skills that translate really, really well is you have to be a good active listener, not just a good listener, a good active listener. Let me give you a comparison. So when I was in marketing, I didn't actually have to really care about how a customer got to their solution. All I cared about was, did they get to their solution? How did the solution benefit them quantitatively? And how can I spin it into a really nice message, right? That was the long and short of what a meeting would be like when discussing a new feature. Comparatively, when you are a product manager, you have to understand not only the different like workflow steps that a user goes through, but also what the different steps are that go into developing your product or service. Because ultimately, your job doesn't end at launch. Your job doesn't end at, as Rich said, everybody's going, oh, the product's awesome, the product's amazing. As the product continues to evolve throughout what you call the product lifecycle, there will be bugs, there will be questions, there will be corner cases that you didn't expect when you were doing research. All of that falls under the product manager's purview, because if you don't know the steps that got you to that point, when there is an error, at Amazon, we have a leadership principle called working backwards. It's impossible to work backwards if you don't know what steps you had to take to get to that point. That is why at Amazon, we talk about working backwards, because it gets you in the framing of knowing how to already troubleshoot your product before it goes out. I think another soft skill that is really important, I know I went a little too long on active listening, is I think you just have to have thick skin. And I know that sounds stupid, right? Like, oh, well, we should all be adults here and have thick skin. But as a product manager, I think this is a really good skill to have, because on one hand, you want to exhibit ownership over whatever product you're working on, right? So you can have pride and make sure, that product is working at its most optimal. But at the same time, you have to separate yourself emotionally, because you're going to get a lot of feedback. One big aspect about being a product manager is all you're doing is receiving feedback. In fact, a lot of people I see it similar to design. Product management is a job that is very easy to talk about, so everybody thinks it's easy to do. So I would say those are the two like soft skills you need to have: active listening, and again, having a thick skin. At a tactical level, I know I keep saying this over and over again, and I sound like a broken record. Like, get this guy off the video immediately. But subject matter expertise is a really big deal. In fact, if you want to go up the product management ladder, your trajectory is going to be relative to your subject matter expertise. In fact, I've noticed that what usually makes most product managers fail is not that they don't have good technical skills, not that they don't have good communication skills, or all the things that I mentioned earlier. A lot of it literally is this person does not understand the industry or the market or the customer as well as their replacement would. And that makes all the difference in the world, because that's where you create efficiencies, right? That's where you can find opportunities to create a product that maybe increases margin. That's where you can find opportunities to reduce a customer pain point that's been an existential pain point for the industry, whatever. If you do not have those skills, I think it just makes it a lot harder to continue to matriculate, which leads me to my last thing, that last skill that you should have, which is both a soft and a hard skill, is being able to continuously improve or having intellectual curiosity. If you do not care about what you're working on and what you're doing, then it's going to be hard to get better. And especially if you're working in technology, if you're not getting better, you're probably going to be getting worse. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Awesome. Any other soft or hard skills any other panelists want to touch on that they think make a good PM?
Yeah, if I can chime in, I think, and it maybe just sums up some of what Jordan already said, is being a strong translator. And what I really mean by that too is not only do you have to translate what your stakeholders and customers want to developers, you have to translate what your developers are saying that they can and are capable of doing and accomplishing, keeping that sort of iron triangle in mind, to then stakeholders and other folks as well. And even just understanding from what your customer is actually asking for. So my organization is so customer focused and heavy. Like, we love each and every single one of our people so hard that we take everything they say very, very seriously and realistically at their word. But we really have to understand is when somebody's saying like, hey, this is going to be a terrible example. I want a checkbox on this form. It is really like, why do you want that checkbox? What problem are we trying to solve? How can we still add value and then sort of work with that team to make decisions? But so it's kind of translating across all groups and communicating in a way that makes sense for all groups as well. I use a lot of analogies in my day-to-day, so I get made fun of a good bit, but I highly recommend that approach.
Also a soft skill of a product manager.
Yes.
Yes, analogies. I thought I was the only one getting made fun of for that. So Megan, I feel a lot better about myself right now.
Good. Okay, analogies. Write that down. Sounds good. Awesome. So touching on that hard skills topic a little bit more, and Nick in chat asked a similar question, but Laura, do PMs have to be technical? I get this question all the time when I'm furiously trying to convince people to become product managers. When I see that spark in them, they're like, but I don't know how to code. And I'm like, Laura, yes, case.
Cool. Yeah, no, the quick answer is no, definitely do not have to be technical. There are benefits to technical PMs, and there are definitely, places where a technical PM is necessary. But I would say overall, you can compensate for that lack of technical knowledge by being able to ask the right questions. And as Megan was saying, kind of critically think about the answers. We, in our balanced team model, are overly collaborative with developers and with our developers and our designers. And so we say that like user stories and, any of our collaborative sessions, the product manager is providing the what and the why. So you're the voice of the business, also working with the designers, the voice of the user. And so you're trying to understand the problem and the picture and what the problem is and why we're solving it, and learn a little bit about the technical landscape to be able to ask the right questions. But really the developers are in charge of the how and the answers there. The questions that you have to kind of follow up with is keeping them on track of scope and making sure that there's guardrails around that, and so that's where I say like you need a little bit, but all of that can be learned on the job. And I am not a technical PM. I've definitely learned a lot over my past 6 years, but that was a huge barrier in terms of my own mental confidence when I was leaving my first job and trying to break into other areas of product management. And after networking and talking with a bunch of people, while it says that a lot of times in job descriptions, if you can demonstrate, some of those other soft skills, and as Jordan was saying, that, that intellectual curiosity, that insatiable curiosity, just always asking the questions and digging in deeper. And it's also stuff that you kind of just start to pick up the patterns and you learn the vernacular. I paired up with I guess unintentionally, it was just me and my developer when I first started. And so this lovely developer Pavel really took me under his wing and explained a lot of what we were doing, and really helped to kind of, I obviously had that luxury, but we were overly collaborative in just how we worked, and he was willing to answer questions and kind of became my right-hand man. So definitely do not need to be a technical product manager. It doesn't hurt, but it also isn't absolutely necessary.
But I thought the engineers always wanted the product manager to tell them how to do it. I thought that's what they really valued from them.
I mean, that's always their number one ask, right, Rich?
I must have had it wrong this whole time.
Yes.
I look for two things when I hire people with no product management experience, and typically I like to keep like half my team of those types of people. Two things. One, leadership. Like you have to, and I don't care where it comes from. It could be volunteering, it could be work, it could be school, but being in a position where you're leading a team in one way, form, or the other. And then the other one is the intellectual curiosity thing. You have to be the type of person who can't stand not knowing the answer. When you hear something and you don't know the answer, I want the type of person that goes in and researches it. I might see leadership on the resume. I won't see that intellectual curiosity thing, but I'm going to probe that in an interview, and I'm going to ask the person, tell me about a problem you solved. How did you solve it? Did you enjoy that? Was it fun? So as a tip, when you're interviewing for a product manager job without experience, have that in your hip pocket, ready to talk about those two things, because they're pretty critical.
Awesome. And, the technical PM title exists, and it is, a type of product management job. And for that role, you will have to be a little bit more technical, but that's not what we're talking about today. So great insight. So the next topic is learning about product at the organization you're currently in. So I mentor a lot of young aspiring product managers, and they aren't in the product org at wherever I'm working. They're in customer service or sales or operations, but they're always peeking over the fence saying how fun it looks, and they're really curious about it. And so how do you learn more about product at your current company without your boss thinking you're unengaged in your current role or anything like that? Megan, do you want to kick this one off for us?
Sure. I think my short answer for me is ask. And again, this of course is very dependent on your boss and your relationship and how much your organization and your boss values your individual development as well. So does your organization have product people? Set up 15 minutes, if you're operational, if you're hourly, say like, hey, let's grab a coffee, whether that's on a floor that has coffee or a Starbucks across the street. Do it in your own time. If you really need to sweeten the deal, ask them for a cocktail, because after a day, your product manager probably needs one of those sometimes. And I think you'll typically find that product people at the organization, if they're strong change agents, are also willing to develop people and create additional change agents. Just the mere fact that you reached out and asked really is that first step in showcasing what Jordan and Rich were just calling, that intellectual curiosity. So I think those are really great signs. If you're unsure really on your current boss and sort of how supportive they will or will not be, I think you can also position it as to say like, hey, I see people creating changes, positive changes within the platform. I'm part of operations or sales or X, Y, and Z. I think by learning something from them, I can add this value into my department. So there's a little bit of beneficial or a benefit, because you can say, I want to learn about this to add value to my current department, while you're also gaining some of those small skills to become a product person.
Yeah, absolutely. Laura, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think Megan hit the nail on the head in terms of networking. And I love Jordan's story, because if you want something bad enough, it can happen outside of the 40-hour work week. So, staying engaged in your current role, if you want to continue to do that, and you can do it over lunches. That was some of the best advice just in general in my career that somebody gave me early on, was to like take out to lunch, at least one person from every department, like learn what they do. And, you start to build advocates across the company for yourself. But, if you're really interested in the product team, just go out to lunch with them. It's something super simple. Everyone has to eat, and you start to build those relationships. And even if it's not as obvious, again, depending on your work situation and how supportive it is, and how much you want to confide in them, you can just ask about their job without, explaining how much you want it, and then you can build up to there. There's also a lot of companies offer like professional development budgets. So going to conferences or taking a workshop or something like that. I know that's usually a stretch, but again, if that's where you want your professional development to go and evolve, putting resources there. The other thing is product management is so interdisciplinary. There are a lot of things that you can learn about and implement in any kind of role whatsoever. So practicing those soft skills that we talked about, and, so that way you can have clear examples that you can point to, when you're interviewing that show that you have those skills, rather than passively reading about it. It's always good to practice and do the skills that you're actually working on. So I would say, those are a couple extra things.
Yeah, definitely. Great. Rich, what fields do you think have competencies that translate well into product, whether it's customer service, sales, operations? Where do you find those insatiably curious folk? Are there patterns, or is it a grab bag?
It's in my experience, it's a grab bag. The key is, in my experience, people with customer-facing roles in the organization tend to be better product managers. And I always tell them that they have to be prepared for their perspective to totally change. Most roles in the company are focused on short-term success. Sales is thinking inside a quarter. A customer success rep is thinking within in a case. An engineer is thinking within a user story. So for our job, we have to be able to go from long-term to short-term, at a backwards, short-term to long-term, on all the time. And so I think an operations person, a lot of times I've seen they're just so excited they get to fix all those bugs that product wanted to fix for them for the last 4 years, and they finally can do that. Too short-sighted, right? You have to be able to pull up and think longer term. Engineers that come into product, which is probably the most common direction I've seen, but they can tend to solution, and they skip the problem and go into how are we going to build this, and kind of to the previous comment, their peers on the engineering side don't like that. Solution consulting or pre-sales consulting is another area where I've seen a lot of success, but they're always thinking they can think too much about the quickest path to revenue. You need to think more, you can't just be chasing big deals. So all of the roles have both pros and cons with them, but I think the biggest thing is you've got to, if you're coming in the product from a different role in the company, you have to be cognizant of being able to think long-term and more strategic than probably what you're doing in the current role. But they're all equally successful. Just like the earlier comment on degrees, there is no right degree. I've had awesome product managers that have zoology degrees and history degrees. It has nothing to do with your degree.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else want to chime in on that one?
If I'll jump in, only because I had to live this transition in real life, and I also wanted to address what Laura and Megan especially had been mentioning earlier about the ways to jump in and what skills work. Rich is right in that I think, the more customer facing you are, I think it's just a muscle that you're building, like a mental muscle that you're building to understand how to think about ultimately what the end result is. Again, like I mentioned in marketing, I didn't have to care as much about the end result as long as the customer wasn't PO'd, for lack of a better word. Right. However, from being in marketing, and particularly when I was at Chegg, which was my first job out of undergrad, working our customer help desk actually gave me the opening I needed to not only share with our CEO, who's actually still there now, Dan, that, hey, there is a large business opportunity for, in this case, scholarships as a business for Chegg. But here is the actual, not just qualitative evidence from the help desk, but I took the initiative to make a report on quantitatively why this could be a really big opportunity for Chegg. And around that same time, again, to what Laura and Megan were saying, one of our really technical product managers, for whatever reason, took pity on me. And he saw that initiative and started investing in me by teaching me different product management skills. And so he would always compare it to whatever I was doing in marketing. And while it didn't give me the product management role at Chegg, it was almost like being a sleeper cell. 7 years later, all of that knowledge and life experience and work experience all culminated at the right time, I think, as a person to interview and do, a halfway decent job on the product management interview, and not just sound like somebody who's using buzzwords, but actually having the ability to speak as somebody with lived-in experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to do about 5 more minutes of discussion, and then we'll switch to some of the questions that we've gotten in the chat. But another question that I get asked a lot that I would love your guys' opinions on is, should someone who's interested in getting a career in product management go to a product management boot camp like General Assembly or Product School or something like that? What are your guys' thoughts on this? Whoever has an opinion can go ahead and chime in.
I can start. And I would say, no, you definitely don't need to do one of those boot camps. Again, it was something that I was heavily considering when I was switching roles. And I was talking to a recruiter, and I kept saying that, I was going to take this course, and he kept saying, why are you going to do this? Like you have the experience that you need. The boot camps get really expensive. And because product is such a hot topic right now, you're going to learn things that you'll implement and help, but you might not necessarily have the financial resources to go about and do that. And so there's a lot of great resources out there that are free, whether it's books or again, going to meetups, workshops. You're already taking a great step by coming to Denver Startup Week and attending webinars like this. And so there's a lot of those types of free resources. That's also another great way to network and meet people and talk to them. And Denver has a great product network in general. The Colorado Product Group is really great. So I would say, the boot camps are there and they can be helpful, but there's definitely other ways where you can learn the skills and demonstrate, how to be a product manager without those credentials.
Yeah. I want to do a +1 to what Laura said, mainly because when I started trying to transition to product, there weren't these boot camps. However, after I actually recently did a session with Product School, talking about breaking into product management. And I even said this, I said, if those boot camps had been there, they definitely would have been helpful. However, and I'm interested to see what, Rich and Megan think about this, but one thing I will say is that even if you've gone to those boot camps, I don't think it has a super huge bearing on whether or not you get the job. Like Rich just gave insight as to what he sees as valuable in a product manager. That's going to be demonstrably different from what Shelby thinks is valuable, or Laura or Megan. And so I think, yes, you should use the boot camps, but much like everything, it should just be a supplementary tool and not to be used as a silver bullet.
Yeah, that's really great insight. And if you guys haven't gotten the memo yet, as you can tell, the theme in product and, beyond is the answer is always, it depends. And so everything in product is very contextual, and you need a lot of information before you can give answers. So that's why we ask more questions than we give answers, because it's always, it depends. But yeah, that's really great insight. So if you don't have a product management boot camp on your resume, and this will be kind of our last topic before we move to Q&A, but if you don't have a product management boot camp or course on your resume, what are some of those things you should put on your resume when you're trying to land your first product role before you get the opportunity to show your intrinsic motivation or your insatiable curiosity? What are some of those things you can demonstrate on your resume without a product title or a product management boot camp? Anyone go for it?
So I can kind of at least kick it off too, at least because I know I'm hiring, have been hiring for a long time, is I look at sort of what value you add. And like, if we're looking at a very tactical bulleted list, I don't want to see, I ran a stand-up. Like, that's cool. We can all learn that. We can all figure that out. I mean, it is good. It is and it's excellent skill to know how to facilitate meetings well. But I think it's really even more valuable to understand how you as yourself can add value to an organization. So what have you done in the past? I want to see things more like, I create an opportunity to save time at XYZ, or saved X amount of dollars, or something along those lines, with very metrics driven, user driven items, because I know as somebody hiring that person, I can teach you the skills, or I can send you to training to go figure out how to, run some of that Scrum framework too. And it also showcases, what you can do. I mentioned like this concept of an athlete before, so we can train you to be a specialist, but if you have that drive to go figure that out. I think there's also other small things that may be a little cheesy too, of like, how can you do this in your personal life and add those things? Like, for me, I moved 5 times in 5 years. And what did I do every time? Sticky notes and a Kanban board, and moved one thing from one column to the next. But those are things that you can do in your everyday life for projects or things as you want to go through. And you can highlight those things on your resume or in an interview too.
Yeah, absolutely. Rich, what are your thoughts on that?
I think including so metrics that are measurable, absolutely, right? And the concept of, I can teach anybody to be a product manager, but there's some kind of other skills I can't teach, you've got to bring to the table. And like the problem solving piece is that. I'll pivot a little bit, because like in an interview, I will always ask a question. And that question is, tell me about my company. Like I'm testing if that person has taken the initiative to research the company they're going to interview at. I don't care if they're the expert. In fact, I don't even really care what they said. I just want some proof that you did a little bit of legwork to understand my market and my business before you got here, because you're going to do a lot of that in your job. So looking for creativity, problem solving. If you have creative pursuits outside of work, that's probably going to get you an interview. If you have a link to a rap video where you're rapping about Ruby on Rails, probably going to get you an interview. So yeah.
Highly recommend. Awesome. So we've gotten some questions during our chat today. Going through them and quickly sorting them in my mind. People are really curious about resources. So we've talked a lot about what product is, what it isn't, how to do it, how much fun it is, but tactically, like when people wake up tomorrow, what should they look at? What should they get into? What should they Google? Books, podcasts, and courses are things that people are wondering. Does anyone have any recommendations besides, I'll just go ahead and do the cliche inspired by Marty Kagan. If you don't have it sitting on your desk, are you even a product manager? I don't know. Besides that, what are some recommendations?
Yeah, I just typed this to Cassie in the chat. I would say the Lean Startup by Eric Ries, Inspired, the Lean Product Playbook by Dan Olson. At Crafted, we're, what is it? I actually have it on my desk. The Ideal Team Player is another big one. Again, kind of working on those soft skills on how it's not directly related to product, but I would say between those three, well, including Inspired, which you already hit, Shelby, in terms of books, are kind of the essential holy grails of lean products.
Yeah, and how would I say it? Outdated title notwithstanding, I'm a big fan of the Mythical Man Month. And by the way, it is not saying that only men can be in product, but I really like this particular book because it comes from the perspective of a developer trying to figure out how to manage development teams more efficiently. And I think if you're somebody who has always felt daunted by technology, right? Maybe you're not technologically native. Maybe you're just trying to get better at your technical skills without, becoming a dev, right? We can't all be Shelby, even though I want to be Shelby when I grow up. But in fact, I literally it's literally on hand right now. I'm in the middle of it, but I think that's really helpful because it shows you which technical details matter for a product manager, while at the same time helps you understand where you may be out of your depth and where you need to defer to the expertise of your developers or subject matter experts who are more indexed on the technical side.
Awesome. Any other thoughts? I have one thought on this, and it's a little untraditional, but as far as resources go, when you're trying to learn about product, I always encourage the people that I mentor to start looking at the world with a product eye. So when you wake up in the morning, what's the first thing that you do on your phone or your laptop? What is that product? What do you like about it? What do you not like about it? What would you change about it and why? Do you think the struggles that you have are the struggles that other users of that platform have? That was the question Rich asked me in my first interview, is what product did you use today that's your favorite? And that's a really good place to start. We're all using digital technology. And so if you start thinking like a product manager just in your day-to-day life, it will really help you translate some of those conversations in your mind when you go into your product interviews.
Yeah, that's kind of the curse of being a product manager, is you dissect every other product manager's decisions, even when you're using your thermostat. So
Yes. And you're like, gosh, if I worked at Instagram, maybe it wouldn't be down right now. I don't know. I'm just kidding. So the Mythical Man Month. Yes, that's the book that was recommended. So are there any actual courses that you guys recommend? Upasana asked, are there any courses to get their feet wet in product management? Maybe if you're just curious and you're not quite committed to making that transition, that you guys know of. The one thing I'll shout out is there are a lot of a day in the life of product managers on YouTube that you can go and watch, especially with work from home for the last couple of years. Be careful, not everything is as it seems on the internet, but it could be a very casual way to kind of get exposed to the product career. Any other thoughts on that?
I think it's been a while since I've done any of the kind of intro courses, but if I remember, the product school has decent resources. There's also I'll circle back and throw it in the chat, but a lot of great resources on like Udemy those are very like reasonably priced. And I'm blanking on her name, but come back to me. I'll come back to it.
Yeah, just if you could circle back on that, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'll circle back.
Cool. And then the last question, which is a pretty good one. So if you are a person who doesn't hold a product role and you're applying to roles, should you only be applying to junior product manager or associate product manager titles on all of your job descriptions that you're applying to, or can you apply to product management positions? What's your guys' opinion on that?
I want to jump in on this one because I was a tweener. Like, this literally was my journey about 2.5 years ago. I think it depends on the level of subject matter expertise you have. So like when I was applying to health tech roles or enterprise software roles, those I applied for regular PM as I was making the transition, because the way I saw it is I got to learn from one of the first ever cloud ERP companies. So whatever small tactical knowledge gap there is to, I think it was Megan and Rich's point, I can learn that as soon as I get there. Like, that's something that can grok really easily. However, if it was something that was more nascent or more innovative of the technology, for example, I applied to a machine learning company. Even though I had done a research project on it for my MBA, I knew that I was going to need a little bit more seasoning, if you will, some more time in the oven. So in that regard, I applied for APM. This gets a lot harder too as you matriculate through your career, because let's say you've been in industry, right? Just working out of college in your specific field for, let's say, like over 5 years. APM, if I'm going to be really honest, kind of becomes a bit harder to get into, especially at larger companies, because usually they set aside APM for people who are earlier in their career and trying to learn not just product management, but also just how to work really effectively in a more corporate environment. So I think if you're somebody who has a lot more experience, like Dan from Chegg used to tell us all the time, bet on yourself. Just bet on yourself, bet on wherever your subject matter expertise is. And it will take a lot of shots. Like I applied to literally 30 jobs a day, bare minimum for like a 5-year period just to get into product management. But eventually timing does work out. And in fact, a lot of my friends who are really high up the product management ladder, they'll tell you like, yeah, I did a lot of work to get there, but I also got lucky.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good tip. Just throw your resume out to everything. If you have the time and energy, statistically, one way or another, it'll work out. Any other thoughts on that as our closing thoughts before we wrap this session up?
Yeah, I think there's only benefit to say it depends as an answer, as just like one last hurrah, as a product person always would. But I would also recommend doing a little like organization stalking, for lack of a better term. So go look at that organization. Do they have a lot of PMs? Do they have a lot of product owners? Do they have BAs? Do they have any at all? Because I think that some of that depends, because if there perhaps is no product management position for people, like when you're looking at LinkedIn, maybe you are the first product manager and they're thinking about it differently, or otherwise. There's some organizations I know in the Milwaukee area where product owners and product managers can be the same thing or opposite, depending on where you're looking. So just do your research, check it out.
Yes. Awesome. Yeah, there's been some resources linked in the chat, so be sure to check those out. Fantastic conversation today, guys. I really appreciate all of my panelists being here today. Hopefully this was beneficial and valuable for some people trying to get into product, for people who are already in product. Thank you for joining in on the conversation. Just as a plug before we leave, Bitly is hiring a senior product manager. So if that is you and you are interested, reach out to me on LinkedIn. It's just my name, Shelby Sir, and you can send me a message. Panelists, I really appreciate you guys being here today. Audience members, although I can't see you, which I'm really sad about, I appreciate you all being here today, and we will chat soon, I am sure. Thanks, everyone.